Hey there, this is Matt with State of Flux here with a review for Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool ushers us into the MCU phase of the X-Men franchise, as we say a fond farewell to the Fox era of films. This is going to be a non-spoiler review up until a certain point where I'm going to get into spoilers, but that section will be clearly marked and warned. So there you have it. I will say up front that I like this movie. It actually might be my favorite of the Deadpool movies, however I'm a little cooler on them than a lot of people are. I found the first film to be very fun and funny and refreshing, especially at the time. However, it is just kind of the thing that it's parodying to the point where its rewatchability isn't as strong as it could be. The second one I don't love. It has big set pieces I really like, but by and large it just I had bumped into too many things, especially with the fridging of the wife. This movie is considerably better than I think either of those two at being a movie and being a superhero movie. That being said, I do think both of those two first films are considerably funnier than anything in this movie. It's not to say that this film isn't funny, there are some really big laughs. It just feels like maybe the writer's strike of it all had a pretty big impact, more so than some people even thought, in the sense that a lot of these jokes felt like first attempt at jokes, and we'll find the scene while we shoot, and that just didn't necessarily happen. It just felt like first draft jokes a lot of the way. Again, some of them are really funny. There are moments in this movie that make me like guffaw, but far less than either of the other two movies. Where this movie works a lot better is its emotional entanglements. There is the lingering emotional thread from the Morena Baccarin character from the first movie that was, as I say, admittedly fridged out of the second one, and one of the reasons I really didn't respond well to that. She has a big impact on this film without having much screen time as well. But the motivating factor that she provides for Deadpool's character is quite strong within the film. But it's really Hugh Jackman and what he does with this character of Wolverine, Logan, Weapon X, whatever you want to call him, that really elevates the film into the level of greatness that it was. And they don't do anything to walk back what his character journeys were in the other, admittedly muddled timeline mess that is the original proper X-Men franchise, the XCU, if you will. But Hugh Jackman is fantastic. His character has emotional heft to him, and it works 100% of the time. It was really refreshing to see him back in his like Wolverine Berserker mode once more, and I enjoyed the chemistry that Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman have. It's noticeable, it's tangible. There's a lot of cameos and surprises and stuff like that that you've come to expect with any of these multiversal event experience movies. Some of it works for me, however none of it really works as well as, say, Spider-Man No Way Home. I'll touch on that in a little bit here, but what I will say is that the surprises are many, and some of them are really quite earned, and I really liked. And some of it is just kind of there for shock value, and that stuff I like a little less. But if I were to compare the usage of the multiversal language of this film, I think it would be mostly comparable to Flash, and how you respond to Flash may be how you respond to this in some ways. Again, we'll touch on that at the end. But by and large, I really like this movie. It has absolutely killer needle drops. It has some really great set pieces, a great return to form for Hugh Jackman reprising this role, and it's ushering into the MCU side of things is done elegantly, and I buy into it enough, and there's teases for stuff to come in the future that I really hope get capitalized on, but I guess we will touch on that in hopefully a few years' time. I give this movie a very firm 3.5 out of 4 stars, and this is the time that I'm going to dip into some spoiler stuff, so hop off. Know that I like the movie. It's my favorite of the 3 Deadpool movies. For context, I'd give Deadpool 1 3 stars and Deadpool 2 2 stars. This film gets the 3.5. It's not as funny as the others, but emotionally resonant and strong with great set pieces. From here on out, it's spoiler time, baby. And, well, there are a lot of spoilers. The spoilers are mostly there for shock value, as I say. This movie features cameos from the likes of not Hugh Jackman. He's right there up on the poster. Henry Cavill. It's got some old faces from prior X-Men movies, like Pyro is back with the original actor, and Sabretooth, and then you are brought in with a couple of characters from non-X-Men movies that have quite a bit of a role in the film, or at least a more elevated role, similar to, but not as well capitalized on, Spider-Man No Way Home. We're talking about the return of Chris Evans. We're talking about the return of Jennifer Garner's Elektra, Wesley Snipes' Blade. We're talking about X-23, Dafne Keen's return to that role. And she has the most relevance to the mix. She has the best scene in the movie with Hugh Jackman that I thought was really emotionally powerful, where she gets to say what she didn't get a chance to with her Logan, and he gets to say to her what he never got a chance to say to his X-Men, and that was pretty great. It was surprising to me how little X-Men there was in the film. I was expecting, honestly, quite a few cameos from the core X-Men group, but only Hugh Jackman is really brought back of the X-Men. As I say, like, you see Toad and stuff like that, and that may have been the, like, Darth Maul Toad, what's his name? Oh man, I can't remember right now. But, like, that may have been the original actor reprising his role as Toad, but for all intents and purposes, it's just a meaningless cameo. They have a lot of lookalikes. It kind of got into a territory of Space Jam: A New Legacy, where you have a person that's not Vinnie Jones, that almost looks like Vinnie Jones playing Juggernaut, and Kelly Hu, I believe is her name, playing what's her name from X2, who scratches up Wolverine. She's back, but it's not actually Kelly Hu, it's just somebody that looks vaguely similar. And I think that's where I kind of bumped into it, and the comparisons to The Flash are pretty strong in the sense that you have Elektra and Blade and X-23 and Channing Tatum's Gambit, who has the best of the role of the bunch. He is so flat out funny that I'm actually disappointed we didn't get the Gambit. Now, I know he wouldn't have been played for laughs in a Gambit movie, but Channing Tatum is gifted comedically. He's a good actor dramatically, too. I think that's worth noting, but he is so damn great as Gambit. But these characters are brought back or brought into fruition for the first time in his case, kind of similarly to how Michael Keaton was brought back in The Flash along with Christopher Reeve and the new Supergirl, Sasha Calle. And it was neat seeing Michael Keaton back and Christopher Reeve as Superman and all that stuff, and bringing in for the first time ever Supergirl into the DCEU, as well as having like the Nicolas Cage Superman or whatever. much like, you know, Gambit in this film. But at the end of the day, after the shock value is over, there's a hollowness to it that doesn't really resonate. And then, like, in The Flash, you find out that, like, that universe is doomed to die, and so your fandom, if you are a fan of Tim Burton's Batman, which I, like, kind of am, just knowing that no matter what, when you rewatch Batman or Batman Returns, you know what the end game for that is and the fates of everybody involved. And you kind of would, like, I'm going to forever have that sense or notion going back and watching Blade 2, which is a film I love and will watch kind of often. And same thing with, I'm a big fan of Ben Affleck's Daredevil, and I'm fine with Elektra in it. Like, Jennifer Garner's a great actress, but knowing what the outcome of that is and where it leads to is kind of going to always be like, was it worth it? I don't know that it was worth it. And that's the difference. That's the separation between your Flashes and your Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man No Way Home brings back 5 villains and 3 Spider-Man. Or 2 Spider-Man. It features 3 Spider-Man. But everybody has a purpose and a character arc. Just focusing on the 2 Spider-Men, you have Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, whose one lesson that he never really learns in Spider-Man 1 and 3, which have quite a bit of thematic connective tissue, is that vengeance is a poison. Aunt May says it to him. And when you live a life of wanting and trying to capitalize on revenge, as he does with Sandman or Green Goblin or the Mugger, it ends up badly, where somebody dies, somebody important to him. And Tobey Maguire gets to pass that lesson on to Tom Holland when Tom Holland's ready to kill Green Goblin. It's Tobey Maguire that steps in sacrificially and takes the hit of the glider to stop Spider-Man from committing something that he himself could never recognize in the moment. He recognizes it in this other version of himself, and he's going to stop it. There's character growth there, and there's obvious character growth with Andrew Garfield, who, unable to save Gwen Stacy, is able to do so for MJ. And it's a beautiful moment that brings me to tears. I'm getting a little choked up talking about it right now. That being said, you don't have that in this. There isn't a need to have Elektra other than the shock value of having Elektra. There's no need to have Blade other than to have the shock value of including Blade. Like, hey, remember this? That was good times, wasn't it? And it was, admittedly. And there's a good joke in there of Ryan Reynolds acknowledging that he was also in Blade Trinity, and that those two people kind of know each other, even though he's a different character now. But what doesn't work so much is the reference to some motherfuckers always try to ice skate uphill is referenced again, and my eyes rolled so hard into the back of my head I almost thought I fainted. That being said, I did enjoy Chris Evans' use in the film. It's pretty subversive and really funny, and Chris Evans is a phenomenal actor, and with the MCU movies especially, he really got to stretch his, like, the virtue of goodness within the character of, like, Steve Rogers, and they really harkened in on that, but he never really got to stretch his comedic muscles. Like, he did a little bit in some of the Whedon Avenger films, but he really exercises phenomenal comedic timing in this film. And you gotta think that, like, when Chris Evans' career started, he started in more comedic roles, so he is a natural to it, and he is so damn funny in this film. The movie does tease, like, a couple things with Thor and Deadpool in the future. There's a scene that you see briefly where it's, I don't think it was Chris Hemsworth, but it's a lookalike Chris Hemsworth holding on and vehemently crying over a dying Deadpool. that you see on the TVA, that compels me, and I feel like that was put in there on purpose because they're planning to use it maybe in an Avenger film later on or something, but I hope it gets referenced again. What other things do I have to say? I think the use of the TVA as the storytelling device really worked for me in this film. Not having seen Loki season 2, I don't know if it infringes on any timeline shit. I've heard some people say that this kind of backtracks what that show established, but if it does, I didn't recognize it. It works well enough for me. But yeah, ultimately I thought some of the cameos were cute. I really liked Cassandra Nova, though she is a bit one note. She's effective as hell throughout the entire thing. I might have played her a bit differently, but the direction they take it and the visceral kind of violence that she brings about with her performance of this like dark Charles Xavier is really compelling in how they did it. So I am on board with it. Hugh Jackman again is fantastic. I was expecting more callbacks to the X-Men proper, the movies that we were familiar with, and it's kind of shocking that they're just not present in the film. But yeah, I like this movie quite a bit. I think the emotional climax where Deadpool and Wolverine team up against Cassandra Nova and whatnot really works, and I really liked it. If X-23's inclusion is here just to propel Wolverine's character arc in this film and really make it resonate, it works wonders, but it is kind of disappointing that the major function of these two female characters in Morena Baccarin's character from the Deadpool trilogy and X-23 in this one is to just motivate the male heroes of the story. And for all intents and purposes, they kind of fridge the Morena Baccarin character again in this one, and that's pretty disappointing. It's also pretty telling that I can't remember her name, and she's in 3 of these movies, one of which I watched literally like 2 hours ago. So, yeah. But the Deadpool dog pool, pretty adorable. I like, there's a scene with a billion different Deadpools. That scene was pretty neat, and I'm curious to find out who those cameos are under the mask and stuff like that. I'll be researching that a little bit later. I guess the one last thing I'll say, and this could just be the old man like shaking hand at Cloud, is I don't know why this movie had to be as violent as it is. Now, I get that's inherent to this franchise and whatnot, but I felt like they just wanted to prove that to the people who feared that it was going to be soft because it was Disney, that like to not have that fear, so they went extremely overboard with the violence and the fucks and stuff like that. And it just was more noticeable to me to the point where I was like, this doesn't feel necessarily natural, and maybe that's the MCU of it all, but I don't know. I did feel like it just felt excessive to be excessive, but I also kind of felt that with a lot of movies these days, so again, maybe just old man shakes hand at Cloud. But it really bugged me in like Zack Snyder's Justice League, where you have Wonder Woman whipping people across the room with her magic lasso, and then the digital blood spraying on the wall and stuff like that just felt super artificial. This never gets to that territory, but it feels like it goes to extremes just to be extreme. And I'm like, why though? The film doesn't really need it? I mean, I'm fine with an R rating and going violent when it's necessary, and to have like Cassandra Nova with her little finger in the face thing probably would have just been imagery worthy of an R rating anyway. But the excessive degree to which it goes kind of rubbed me the wrong way. That being said, I really like the movie. 3.5 stars is what I give it. I noticed in my spoiler aspect of the film, I didn't give as many positives as I did in the front half, but I think that goes to speak to the vitality of these multiversal events. if you're not going to do anything narratively important with it, then all it is just artificially cool for a little bit. But once that artifice is past, you're left with just little nuggets of complaint. And I think that's sort of where the state of the MCU and feature films are right now. That certainly seemed to be the case for the DCEU as well. And like, to prove my point, nobody's complaining about the Spider-Verse movies, and that's because they utilize their multiversal world for dramatic purpose, and it works resoundingly well. And I thought it worked much better than most people give it credit for with No Way Home. No Way Home, people say, is like the common argument I hear, which I don't agree with at all, is that it's there just for fan service, but I disagree. I think, as I mentioned a little bit ago, that film firmly has a purpose for using its multiversal characters. It builds upon the characters already established in other movies, extending their character arcs and developing new ones within their respective films. But it's a film that visually tells the world that people that complained that Spider-Man was relying too much on MCU characters learns to rely on himself, and they tell you that visually with Peter Parker and Peter Parker and Peter Parker all learning to rely on each other, or in essence, Peter Parker learns to rely on himself and not reach out to others to solve his problems. So, I'll get off my high horse. Deadpool and Wolverine gets 3.5 out of 4 stars. I think you're in for a very good time, especially if for first-time viewing. Try to get in there without any of these spoilers. I know I should have said that before my spoiler discussion. But I willfully left out some things from this spoiler discussion so that they could still land and maybe resonate a little bit with you. I hope you enjoy the movie. Let me know what you thought of in the comments section down below. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.